Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time I covered General William W. Loring's attacks on the Union position at Peachtree Creek. This video covers the final attacks made by Alexander P. Stewart's Corps of the Army of Tennessee. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from the Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. Confederate Army of Tennessee Commander John Bell Hood had ordered an in-echelon attack by divisions from the corps of William Hardee and Alexander P. Stewart. Thus far, Hardee's attack stalled out, making no headway. One of Stewart's divisions under William W. Loring had gained some initial success but failed to break the Union line in their front. Now two other divisions were moving toward Union Major General Joseph Hooker's line, those under Edward Walthall and Samuel French. Edward O'Neill's brigade of Alabamians began driving back the Union skirmish line in front of Alpheus Williams's division. The in-echelon attack allowed Williams and other Union generals to know that the rebel attack was forthcoming, and he had many of his men ready for combat. But Joseph Knipe's brigade was still marching to get to James Robinson's right flank. As the Alabamians came up, they slammed into Knipe and Robinson's brigades as Knipe placed his troops in the nick of time. The two sides threw lead at one another, and a desperate fight broke out, with O'Neill's men launching multiple attacks on Williams's line. A member of the 82nd Ohio named DeWitt Foos allegedly helped a wounded comrade to the rear, and once to the rear, the provost marshal ordered him to guard some prisoners. By the time he rejoined his regiment, the battle would nearly be over, and he got accused of cowardice. He was court-martialed and found guilty and sentenced to stand on a barrel for 2 hours a day for 20 days, with a sign on his back reading, "I skulked before the enemy." Another Union soldier fired his gun so many times that the barrel became so hot as he was ramming a cartridge down the barrel. The heat set off the powder, and it shot the bullet as well as the ramrod out of the gun. The surprised Federal soldier, without a moment's hesitation, yelled, "Take that and see how you like it." He then scrambled around the dead and dying, attempting to find a replacement ramrod. The 24th South Carolina, part of States Rights Gist Brigade of William H.T. Walker's division and William Hardee's corps, had been left behind earlier in the day when Stewart's and Hardee's corps shifted east. They were still on picket duty in the same spot they were before the corps moved, and when the battle began, they began to move to find Gist's brigade. Stewart found the regiment, and instead of letting it go back to its own brigade, ordered it to join O'Neill, knowing O'Neill needed reinforcements. So the 24th South Carolina temporarily joined the Alabamians in their attack against Williams's line. The thick forest resulted in the men standing just 25 yards away from each other in some areas, firing away. A Union soldier shot in the chest calmly handed his rifle and equipment to his captain, telling the captain he appreciated his kindness and that he wouldn't need this equipment any longer, then walked a few yards to the rear, laid down, and died a few hours later. The South Carolinians began to work their way around the flank of Knipe's line, threatening the integrity of the entire division's defenses. Williams energetically called on Thomas Ruger's brigade to supply reinforcements. Knipe went to Ruger's line to personally choose the regiment to reinforce his own line. Joseph Hooker was with Ruger's brigade and pointed to a regiment to send to Knipe. Knipe yelled, "No, I don't want that one." Hooker pointed to the 27th Indiana, and Knipe said, "All right, I'll take that one. 27th Indiana, I want you. This old brigade never has been whipped, and it never will be whipped." With Knipe there to lead them, the Hoosiers approached the flank. The fight intensified as the men from Indiana fired away at the South Carolinians. A sergeant in the 27th attempted to bring some levity to the situation and called out to Knipe and asked, "General, have you any chewing tobacco?" Knipe, who had been excitable during the entire engagement, calmly walked up to the man and produced a plug of tobacco. The sergeant was amazed at the general's actions and surprised that he actually thought the joke was a serious question. He didn't know whether to take it or not. Knipe said, "That's all I've got." The sergeant took a knife, cut a piece off, and Knipe kept the rest. Williams sent more reinforcements in the form of the 101st Illinois and the 82nd Illinois from Robinson's line to refuse the line to the west. Try as they might, O'Neill's Alabamians couldn't break Williams's line. To the west, Daniel Reynolds' brigade of Walthall's division came up to engage with Anson McCook's brigade of Richard Johnston's division of the 14th Corps. Reynolds' Arkansas troops hit the exposed 104th Illinois and began to turn its flank. The commander of the regiment began moving what troops he could to his right flank to combat the Arkansans. The pressure led McCook to dispatch the 15th Kentucky and 21st Wisconsin to drive back the rebels, and with the 10th Wisconsin coming up on the 104th left flank, they were able to stabilize the line and inflict significant casualties on Reynolds' men. Samuel French's division of Stuart's corps was also supposed to come up and attack the Union line, but by the time they got to within striking distance, it was dusk, and all the previous attacks had failed, so they never fully engaged, other than skirmishing with their Union counterparts. The fight for Peachtree Creek was over. Estimates vary, but it seems as though Hood and the Confederate Army of Tennessee lost 2,500 men total in the engagement, while Thomas and the Union Army of the Cumberland lost around 1,750 men. One Union soldier wrote, "I have just ridden along our division front, also Hooker's. The slaughter was severe. Dead rebels lie thickly strewn upon the ground. Our casualties were light. Hooker thinks his losses are heavy, but I saw only 7 dead of his men, along a front where I counted 150 rebels." A newspaper correspondent described the rebels being captured. "Prisoners are coming in large squads, and as I write, a party of about 200 has just arrived, and I understand that others are on the way. The whole number brought in up to the present writing is, I suppose, about 800, although it is difficult to form an estimate at a point where they are hastily collected and being rapidly sent to the rear. The Battle of Peachtree Creek was John Bell Hood's first battle as commander of the Army of Tennessee, and it only produced more casualties for the Confederate side and didn't bloody George Thomas's army enough to force William T. Sherman to pull his army group back from the gates of Atlanta. Following this battle, James B. McPherson's Army of the Tennessee and John Schofield's Army of the Ohio were descending upon Atlanta and were now within 3 miles of the city. Hood would need to act quickly.